It's time to come out of the Matrix.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland.
Welcome, everyone, to Beyond the Matrix, Jewish Answers for Life and Faith. I'm your host, Ira Michelson, along with my co-host,
Rod Bryant.
If you're listening right now, it's because you made the decision to unplug and join the real world.
Look, you're not going to find anyone controlling things from behind the curtain here. No need to click your heels 3 times. Just make the choice between the blissful ignorance of illusion or embrace the sometimes painful truth of reality.
We have an exciting show for you today, so get strapped in as we go beyond the Matrix. And here we are on another episode of Beyond the Matrix. I'm your host, Ira Michelson. Unfortunately, without my sidekick, Rod Bryant. As most of you know already, Rod had a death in the family. His mom passed away just after Shabbos this past week, and Rod is in Louisiana. I made an error. I said Los Angeles, but what do I know? It said L.A., so I just assume when I see L.A. that it's Los Angeles. Anyway, I ask you, our listeners, to continue to pray for Rod and his family, that they would be comfort in this time of mourning, and that you would certainly be praying for him as that he would get home safe when he has to travel back home, and that we would have him back here on the Matrix soon. Anyway, as always, we try to bring you topics that are relevant to you, and sometimes they may not be relevant to you, but okay. I think that they're relevant, so and it's my show, so I get to do these kind of things. So, one of our guests today, we actually have 2 special guests today, but one of our guests has been on the Matrix before, and you guys had a great time with her. You loved hearing what she had to say about Judaism. And we talked about not only about Judaism and Jewish people as it relates to Judaism, but we talked a little bit about the nations as well, which is a big focus here on the Matrix. And we're going to bring her on soon with her sidekick. She's with her sidekick today, so it's not fair that they're together and that I have to do this by myself. But I think we're going to have fun today. So why, you don't even know what the topic is, folks, but I'm going to say, why did I come up with this? Well, it's something that's relevant in my own life because it's something that my wife chooses to do. It's something that my wife chooses to do on her own. I never, prompted her or asked her or told her. Most of you know my story, my past, and most of you know that I'm about teshuvah. Return that I grew up, Orthodox and went off the derech, went off the way, and came back to my Judaism, to Torah observant Judaism, and so this is something that became relevant for her, and so when it becomes relevant for her, it becomes relevant for me and relevant for our household. This is a more specific show because I think what's important to note is that people are going to see the title of the show and they're going to hear the show, and it might be that men are going to say to themselves, well, this is not relevant to me. And I beg to differ with you, gentlemen. I think that if you hear what's being said today, that you will have information that's presented to you as well that you'll find very interesting. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our special guests for today, and they are, again, previous guest of ours, Rivka Malka-Perlman and Andrea Grimberg. Welcome to Beyond the Matrix.
Hi.
Hi. How you guys doing?
Hello. Yeah.
So Rivka Malka, I'm going to start with you. A good many of our guests, our listeners, our listeners know, and I'm sure maybe some guests know you as well, because I always bring your name up sometimes in conversation. But our listeners certainly know you from the last time that you were on our show, and I brought you on because of a video that I saw that you did about Judaism. But maybe kind of refresh the memories of our listeners, and certainly we have some new listeners since the last time you are, a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, Ira, thanks for having us on. We love your show and we love your mission, and we're really grateful to be a part of it. So, hi, listeners, and I had a great time being on the show last time. I'll catch you all up. I'll give you a little bit of my Jewish history, just like a super duper quick recap, so you know where I'm coming from. So I grew up in a Torah observant household, and it was a pretty joyful upbringing. Somehow through my education, I would say there was a lot of messages that I missed that I only got as an adult. You may argue you can only get these messages as an adult, but there were a lot of missing links having to do with an even more joyful, more colorful Judaism, and most importantly, that the focus of Judaism is a relationship with Hashem. So this is something that I learned later on in life. I went through a near-death experience, and as I got introduced to the teachings of the Breslov teaching, when I spoke to you, I am 37 now, and I have a bunch of kids back home, thank God. When I spoke to you last, I was the director of WOW, which is a Jewish outreach organization for young professionals, and it's still my passion, bringing Jews back home, back to where they will be the most happy and fulfilled, and giving them, what they've been looking for, or at least showing them what's possible. However, a little change, a huge giant change actually, somewhere towards in the last couple of months, I experienced, I guess you would call it, spiritual burnout. I found that directing, event planning, marketing, hosting, calling, counseling, etc., did not leave a lot of time, and most importantly, emotional space to tend to the needs of my children. So thank God, circumstances in my life allowed me to pull out of that position completely. We still host our friends from that organization for Shabbos. We still occasionally make parties, and I haven't stopped loving people, so I'm still out there. But it's a very big shift.
It's so interesting that you bring that up, not to veer off from really what we want to talk about today, but I always find it interesting that many of us that have this similar kind of mission, whether it's bringing Jewish people back to Judaism, to Yiddishkeit, whether it's, being Lord Goyim, a light to the nations as well, that sometimes in our mission we get so caught up in ministering to other people that we forget about the most important people, in our own home, our wives and our children and our family.
Yeah, so, I have actually, it's a huge problem, and it's why spirituality is mostly, being a really good person is mostly about balance, because I've seen this mistake, I've seen people get off course, and I didn't want to be one of those guys, and it does pull you. It's very hard decisions every day, sometimes every hour, there's difficult decisions to make, but just to sum up, well, I guess I did get into something new that, thank God, is right in harmony with that, and in a crazy, godly, kind of providential way. I think in a way I'm able to connect with more people now in a different way. So that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. We want to save some of the good stuff until we hear it from Andrea. Andrea, tell us. It's Andrea Grimberg.
Hi there. Hi. So happy to be on the show right now. I listen to your show all the time, and I actually read more from your listeners. And I'm kind of one of those stalkers on Facebook that reads all these conversations, and it's so inspired. So my name's Andrea Greenberg. I'll give you a very quick update on who I am. I grew up in Canada. I grew up knowing that I was Jewish, but really not caring and wanting nothing to do with it. Later in life, I got deeply interested and connected to Judaism and became Baal Tshuva, and that was obviously, it's a huge story. I have written about it, so if any of the readers are interested, they can read about it. I play the cello, and that's what I do for my life. I've played the cello since I was 5 years old, and I really believe deeply that music is going to save the world. And And so that's what I spend my days doing, is teaching kids and performing and doing awesome music, cello stuff, and spending time with Rivka Malka, which is what we're doing right now.
Ah, awesome. I'm married to a musician as well. My wife is a flautist.
Oh, wow. We should play together.
Yeah, she's amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. She's also been playing since a young age, but she's really been kind of busy and hasn't been able to do anything with it for the last few years. But, it's always funny that when I tell people that, I have a good friend of mine that was a very well-known in the rock industry. He was actually Rod Stewart's band leader, bass player, is a close friend of mine. And we went to see them in Fort Lauderdale one time. And when they found out she played the flute, they wanted her to get on stage and jam with them. And and she was like, well, I don't have my flute. And the sax player was like, oh, I have one right here.
Oh my gosh.
But she wouldn't. She didn't get up to do it. But yeah.
Well, so in practice, it's a lot.
Yeah. So that's great. And I have listened to you. I've seen a video, and wow, what an amazing cellist you are.
Oh my gosh, video. Oh yeah, that video was for like an art installation. It's a great video.
Yeah.
I think I should
So two very different backgrounds, and yet you've both come together in this very interesting way. So why don't you talk about that? Why don't you tell us how you guys met and about your relationship?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. So I met Aliyah, and I lived in Israel for quite a few years, and met my husband, and we ended up going to Chicago because he was doing his master's degree there. And we didn't end up moving into the Jewish community because we were poor students living in a studio apartment and couldn't afford to live in the beautiful Jewish community there. So I was very isolated. I was Canadian and Israeli. I couldn't work. I was there because I was moving with my soulmate, something I really promised myself I would never do. Anything I said I would never do, I've actually done. So yeah, beware of doing that. So I was in Chicago, and I was, learning how to cook and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was quite lonely. And when I went there, I was told very, very specifically that I would have to buy, because I cover my hair because I'm married, that I would have to buy a wig because under no circumstances could I walk into Chicago and not cover my hair with a wig. So I actually did buy one, but I walked into Chicago and found out that not only did I not want to wear my wig, that I wanted to wear beautiful tichels. So I was walking around. Tichels, by the way, are the Yiddish word for head covering. So I would wear these elaborate, crazy scarves and make up these new ties, and I was walking around Chicago doing this, and of course was getting stopped on the street, in coffee shops, by non-Jews and Jews alike, asking me about what I was doing with my head. But to be honest, I was quite lonely. And I did have friends asking me, you should really put on some videos on YouTube so other people can learn how to tie. And I was like, I'm a pretty introverted person. And I was at a bit of a low point there that I didn't necessarily want to go online and start sharing my story. So to make a long story short, I had a health scare, and it really woke me up. And I said, well, I don't have much time on this earth. What am I doing being all self-indulgent and withholding all these gifts that I've been given? There's people out there that are asking for it and that need it desperately, especially in Chicago where no one, knew my story, and no one, especially with the hair tying, no one knew how to actually tie their hair scarves beautifully. So I, bit my tongue and went online and started making videos, made a blog, and that's where I started. And I think it was even a week in or 2 weeks in, a friend of mine, actually it wasn't a friend of mine, but it was on one of my YouTube videos, someone had seen that there were other videos popping up on the side of my YouTube videos, and there's this woman named Rivka Malka, and this friend emailed me and said, do you know this woman? And I was like, no, never heard of her. So I went on, and the tears started pouring. I was so happy because I was so lonely, and there's someone else in the world who loves color and life and joy and Judaism, and she was just so connected and loving it. She was radiating out of the screen, and I was in awe and bowled over. So I sent her an email, all exciting, saying hi, can I be your friend, please? I'm so happy you're out there. And I probably sounded a little off the wall there, but I was just so happy. So over the year or two that I was in Chicago, we kept in touch, and I came to Baltimore once and met her in person, but it was a very short meeting. And then, long story short, is that my husband got into an amazing doctoral program in Baltimore, and we moved around the corner from Rivka Malka and her family. And now I can see her every day. It's really incredible.
Wow, awesome! That really is an awesome story. So you kind of let the cat out of the bag about what we're talking about today. By talking about these the tichel, or in Hebrew, what do we say? Mitpacha. Mitpacha, and and you brought up the issue of the wig, and talking about this really colorful, the colorful ties and the videos you were doing, and it's interesting because when I was first introduced to Rivka Malka, somebody sent me a video that she did that really had nothing to do with the tichel. It had to do with Judaism, which really caught my attention, and that's why we brought her on the show. And it was only after that I started seeing these other videos that you talk about popping up, and I said to my wife, honey, you got to come and see this. This is amazing. And then my wife, Lori, started watching all of Rivka Malka's videos and, untying the tichel and the different colors. And now she goes out there and she's posting on Facebook pictures of herself and, giving people all the tips on the places we find. I mean, we find the most amazing places with the cheapest, scarves. And I usually send messages to Rivka Malka now. Oh, you got to send the people over here because we found this amazing section in a store and there's only $5 a piece or whatever. But I don't want to take away from that now because we have we're going to talk about this a little bit later. We're going to talk about another amazing resource that's even better than any store that you can go into. But we're going to talk about that down the road. So here's the thing. You said something very interesting. There's a word that came out of your mouth, Andrea, that I just wrote down, and I put I underlined it 100 times. You used the word radiating. And you use that word radiating as it relates to Rivka Malka. And I have to tell you, I had to turn my video off, listeners, because the radiating that was coming from the screen of me looking at these two amazing women. And it wasn't just the beautiful colors of the tichels that they were wearing. And most of our listeners know you. And have seen pictures of you on Facebook, these amazing colors and things like that. But really, both of you really do radiate. You radiate what you believe in. You radiate Judaism and love for people and love for Klal Yisrael and for the nations as well. So I just had to say that, and it was so bright that I had to turn my video off today, folks. So, so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the whole idea of, now that you brought up the idea of, tying a tichel and covering your hair, saying that you're a married woman, that you need to do that. That's a very interesting subject because we have some things, we don't have anything really specific in the Torah as far as a mitzvah that says this is something you must do. We have kind of allusions to it. We see certain things. We've talked about this off air a little bit. We have the issue of the sotah, the man that brings his wife before the Kohen HaGadol, before the high priest. And the Hebrew there uses the word para. And it's translated in different ways. It can mean to uncover or to unbraid. But the interesting thing is that when you look back in history, when you look back at biblical times, we see that there were certain women that covered themselves. And, there was this idea of veiling. But the veiling was more not the veil that we know today of covering the face, like you see, but it was almost like a hood that would cover the hair as well. And so that when we see things like the sota and this idea of the high priest uncovering her, we see other allusions like in the Afator, the captive bride, and this idea of her hair being trimmed or her hair being shaved. During this period, this 30-day period, that a man decides whether or not he still wants her and whether or not he takes her as a wife at the end. We have all of these allusions, and of course in the Talmud, we see things spoken about it as well. Although we don't see it specifically in the 613. certainly we have enough information to tell us that this is really something that's very important, but not just important to do because we have to do it. But I want you to tell our listeners why it's important to do for you. And either Rivka Malka or Andrea, you can answer that. Whoever feels more radiating right now.
Well, maybe before we answer that, and this might give you a clue, kind of a tag team answer. You asked Andrea about the word radiating, and you are right on target because we do end up using that word a lot. So maybe Andrea can tell you what that's about.
Okay.
So there is a Kabbalistic idea that when a woman gets married, the spiritual nature of her hair changes after the first night with her husband.
Right.
And therefore, that now she keeps it under wraps in public. And we've noticed often, over and over again, that when we go do a show and we wrap a woman's hair, is that somehow her spirituality, not somehow, there's a real practical reason why this happens, is that when her hair is contained under her tichel, her face radiates in a completely different, pure way. And it's obvious. It's like, it happens. Like, everyone notices it. You see it. I personally, as someone that was defined by my hair my whole life, I feel so much more like myself. I feel like I can give so much more. I feel like there's someone hugging my head, either God or my husband or both all day. And I can give so much more when I cover my hair. And the best moment is when the woman herself looks in the mirror after we tie her up, and she, women, I would like to talk about this afterwards, but like for a woman to look in the mirror and say, I look beautiful, and this is not about a size, and this is not about, I am beautiful. This is a life-changing moment, and we get to see it all the time once the hair is put away, because the face in Hebrew is called the panim. And that's the same word as panim, which means your innerness. So all this external stuff that's coming out of your head, you put it away and only your inside shows. Wow. And people are beautiful and their souls are beautiful and it shines out, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a way, what you're saying is that in a sense, it really draws out the neshama to the surface.
I think you could say the same for any mitzvah, that everything in the Torah, I call it like a recipe for our soul. Each one of the 613 or each one of the 7. When you tap into that, you're tapping into your soul. So definitely.
Yeah. Interesting. So the other thing that was brought up, Andrew, you were talking about, the idea that there's no way that you could walk the streets of Chicago without a wig. And that's a very interesting thing. Now, my listeners already know that I'm a controversial guy. We always laugh about this. They always say that I'm the bad cop and Rod's the good cop. But, I try to be controversial, but being respectful at the same time. This is an interesting thing that happened. I was sharing with you guys earlier that, last night we were at an Aliyah fair. And, my wife was pointing out, we're kind of people persons or person peoples or whatever. We like to watch people. We like to see people, and I like to read people. I like to see that, how people are radiating, the love of Hashem and Judaism and so forth. And it's interesting because Lori said to me, we were talking about how as Jews, maybe we have a little bit better radar about this, that we can typically see when a woman is wearing a wig and when she's not, even though the wigs are really beautiful and they look great. But it's very interesting to me that when I was really doing some research for the show, that there was such what we call a machloches, an argument in the sages talking about this, that, I actually saw some resources back in the, anywhere from the 1500s on, 1700s, where Chazal talked about the fact that a wig was really not an acceptable practice back then, and yet we've transitioned into this idea of the wig. And I thought that was very interesting because, in a way, for me, when I look at a woman that's wearing a wig, if the idea is not to make her less attractive, because you just brought it out, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, when my wife ties a tichel, it draws me I don't know how to describe it. There's just a spirituality about her face. I look at her face, and I only hope and pray that part of that countenance is as a result of my leading her in the proper way, in our household. But I look at her, and so it's never meant to be less attractive, and I think that's part of the problem. I think part of the problem is that a lot of people have this idea that that the covering of the hair was meant to make a woman less attractive. And this is why I bring up the wig, because to me, if your argument is, and I'm not saying that's ours, and this is not the position I'm taking, but I'm saying if there was an argument that the whole point of a woman covering her hair was to make her less attractive to men, then it makes no sense to me that you would put a wig on, especially when you're paying, I don't know, I mean, those things are like really expensive now, thousands of dollars that women pay to wear a wig that really, in essence, is making them more attractive. So to me, it doesn't make any sense. So I just thought that I would kind of throw that into the mix, because certainly I have to tell you, this is just my perspective, folks. And what do I know? I'm not the tichel expert. But if you were to take a woman, if you were to take my wife, now my wife is not a good example because I love her no matter what. But if you were going to take a woman that I don't know, that wears a tichel, and stand her next to a woman that wears a shadel, that wears a wig, I can tell you that I would absolutely see the difference. I think I would absolutely see the difference in that word radiating that you're talking about. That's just my perspective. So I have a question. Since you brought that up, Andrea, maybe you can start off, and then Rivka Malka, you can follow up. What do you guys say to the woman who thinks that this is a burden? In other words, I talked to somebody recently that also came from an observant home. Yeah.
Ira, do you want? You brought up so many interesting things in your last comments.
All right, I know. So no, stop me.
About sheitel.
Yeah,
so if you want us to comment on that before we dive into the next topic,
we have some good thoughts on that.
All right, so please.
Okay, so the first thing I want to bring up is that for me, in my mind, I have to say that there's a difference between being attractive and being attracting. Mm-hmm. And as women, we, thank God, we've been enabled with a certain kind of knowledge called bina, that we know things deep down. When a woman looks into the mirror in the morning after she dresses herself, she knows if she's being a kiddush Hashem, like a light, a radiating light, or an attractive, alluring person. And it's different for every single woman. So she has to, every woman has to really be honest with herself and ask herself that in the morning. The second thing I want to say is that never is it about a piece of cloth on your head or a wig on your head. This is something that actually Rivka Malka wrote about in her blog when she talks about tichels, is, if only it was so simple as putting a scarf on someone's head. It's not about that. It's about making the mitzvah your own and really understanding what you're trying to do through the mitzvah. Really saying that I want to connect to my creator. I want to connect to the world around me. Who do I want to be? How do I want to connect to the world around me? And how am I going to do that? How are the clothes and the way I cover my hair, how is that going to allow me to be the best Kiddush Hashem, the best Jew, the best human being possible? And that's a really difficult question, and the answer is going to be different for every single person.
Yeah.
So in terms of sheitels, we live in America. If you go to Israel, sheitels are not as common. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of Jews have to go into the workforce and feel like they want to still do the mitzvah of covering their hair, but, they don't necessarily want to draw, attention to themselves. For me, I like that attention. I like when people ask me about my tichel so I can tell them about Judaism, but not every woman wants to do that. Not every woman wants to talk about covering her hair. So, that's, in my opinion, why the wig has become so popular in America. And they do make women feel attractive, and I think that's important. So, again, it's really, really different for every single woman, and I don't take a firm position on anything. I ask all women to really don't do what your neighbor is doing. Don't do what your friend is doing. Just really be honest with yourself and ask yourself, how do I do this mitzvah or the act of covering my hair in the best possible way?
Really beautifully said.
Yes.
I don't even. Go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I don't even. I love every word she says. That is gorgeous, gorgeous. Really, and I think that's one of the things that kind of is a fixing that we need to do in our generation is something that Andrea touched on, is that we have to make our Judaism, and not just Judaism, everyone's relationship with God, our own. I think that's what this show is about, is really questioning and thinking, what is right, what is truth? And sometimes when you're in a community where many people are Torah observant, you stop thinking. You just keep doing, and we invest so much in the external commandment instead of the internal commandment. I was thinking as she was talking, or maybe as you were talking before, of kind of an analogy. Today large weddings are really, that's how people do it. They make really, really large weddings in our community. And a wedding, you know what a cheap wedding package costs? $10,000. Yeah. That's cheap. Usually a wedding, it can cost up to $20,000 with all the extras, right? Nobody has that kind of money. So I'm thinking, what if the couple took that $20,000 and invested it in their relationship? You can now have date night for the next 50 years. You can have, that's really important, or maybe you can have premarital counseling for half that money, or something where you're investing in the innerness of the relationship. Instead, it's the external wedding that gets all the attention, So I think that when we see that people have adopted this thing of a wig, even though if you put it in technical terms, it's a very difficult thing to wrap your head around, pardon the pun, but I have young non-religious Jews ask me all the time, I don't get it. You cover your hair, but then you're wearing hair. What's the point? This is not, it's not rocket science. It's actually confusing. You have to, it takes some explanation,
Right.
So my perspective on it actually is very, very similar to Andrea's in that you can make a Kiddush Hashem wherever you go. But I do think that its popularity is a product of our exile, of our state of brokenness. Mm. If we were in a state of wholeness, we would enjoy having a uniform of sorts, a statement of sorts that says, I am here to serve the world. You see me? I cover in this way. Now you know who I am. I'm a Jew, or I'm a Noahide, or I'm someone who cares to serve the world in a godly way. And it would be an exciting and wonderful thing instead of something to hide.
Amazing. So now it, I was wondering what if we're going to have enough to talk about today, and it's just every time we speak, we come up with these new things to talk about. So I'm just very excited about this. So I just thought of something as you were both speaking about this, and on the same subject, I just had this thought to myself. Typically, what ends up happening is that when you see a woman wearing a wig today, and this is just my perspective, listeners, so don't, thank God you can't throw tomatoes at me. But the wig to me presents a woman as more standoffish. There's at least what I can see, because I just assume that person has chosen to be much more observant. It's like you're firmer than thou kind of thing. I'm just being funny at this point. But my point that I'm trying to make is that when you wear the tichel, and certainly wear the tichel the way you guys do, and the way my wife does, and the way so many listeners do that follow you guys, is that it does make you more available to people. You find that people are more willing to come to you and say, oh, that's very interesting. Why do you do that? And it does give you the ability to speak about Judaism, to speak about why you do what you do, rather than somebody looking at, oh, that person is unapproachable. And I think that that's an amazing thing. It's funny at my shul, when Lori comes on Shabbos, that there's always somebody that comes up here and says, oh, that's such a nice hat. Or that's such a nice turban. And so the point is, we shouldn't assume that even Jewish women so much know about this, because you can go to a shul, and even though for instance, we go to a modern Orthodox shul, that we can't assume that everybody knows, because people come from different backgrounds, like the three of us. And we can't assume that people just know. So it really does give women that decide to do this a great opportunity, especially with the message that you guys are bringing, a great opportunity to be able to open people up to this message and the beauty of it. So,
can I comment on one thing you said?
Sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned that when you see a woman, I think we both agree with you that sometimes there can be something more approachable. It's like less of a barrier when you have a tichel versus a wig. But then you also said that it feels to you like maybe they're in some way, more religious or holding some kind of a standard. So because we're controversial,
it's a perspective.
I want to say that, we always, wherever we are, we hold ourselves as normal. This is the plight of humanity. Anyone who does more than us is a fanatic. Anyone who does less than us doesn't know what he's talking about. Right. This is just our plight. So we try to be careful to take those very human emotions and and attach compassion and logic and humility to them, so that for a woman to feel beautiful, and we'll get into what we do and how we try to help women feel beautiful. Its importance to her entire psyche, to her family, to her marriage cannot be understated. And women want to feel beautiful. Most women haven't been given an option besides for the wig. All they know about is a beret or a cap or a hat, or they probably really love everything that you stand for, but they just haven't been given an option. Right. So when I see a woman in a wig, I know that, either she might think I'm nuts and is maybe more religious and think I'm, on the fringe, or she might just be a nice lady who got dressed that morning and tried to feel good. Right.
So now most of the people already know that I'm the perspective guy. So what I'm saying is this can also be people's perspective or presupposition about a person. I'm certainly not putting it out there that person is more religious or less religious, whether they wear a tichel or a wig. I'm just saying what most people's perceptions are is that person would be viewed as less approachable, perhaps, than the person that's tying the scarf, especially one that's. Especially the ones that are so beautiful and so colorful, that really even women of the nations are drawn to this. And maybe you might want to touch on that a little bit about how many women are approaching you that are not Jewish.
We love them. We're so inspired by Hashem's world at this point. I mean, oh my
words.
gosh.
It's amazing.
I mean, even though this is a Jewish, we say the word Judaism a lot, there's something we really haven't said, and that is just connecting with humanity. Oh my, and the beautiful souls that are out there, and the modesty that they're striving for, and I mean, they're I believe that the more that we connect, and right now it's on the internet, and one day we'll all be standing in a big circle in Jerusalem, the more that we connect with each other, the whole world, not just the Jewish people, the Jewish people, all the nations of the world, the more we get to know each other, the more we will see the beauty that is inherent in everyone. And our minds are mind-boggled. What am I saying? If you would read the emails that we get, you would be crying like we do. We literally cry tears of inspiration at these women.
Like these, you said that every single object, never mind human being, has an infinite spark within it. And it's just like, with what we're doing, it's like boom, 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 like, oh my gosh, all these sparks are getting brought into this world. And we're so lucky to get to see these sparks coming into the amazing.
And many women are sacrificing a lot. I mean, here we have this Jewish show, this Jewish community. These women are in Alaska, Navy bases, Spain, the Netherlands.
They're the only ones in their whole community doing, looking into truth and connection. And yes, hair covering is part of that. So they look different, and they have so much bravery and courage and light. It's
yes,
amazing.
It's really true.
And I don't think sometimes we recognize that and give credit for that. It's interesting because sometimes what'll happen is, I have a close friend of mine that's a rabbi that says to me he envies me. And I said, why do you envy me, Rabbi? And he says, I envy you because you've been tested in a way that I've never been tested. He said, I grew up in an observant home and I've never been tested this way. And it really changed my perspective on how I look at myself and how I see myself as a Jew and how I interact with other people. So what you're saying really resonates with me because, when you're in a Jewish community, when you're kind of, in that bubble and insulated, it's great. People don't look at you in a strange kind of way. But when you're taken out of your comfort zone, and so many of these people they live outside of a comfort zone, especially a woman who chooses to wrap her head, that's in a place like you're talking about, like Alaska or someplace out there where there are not Jewish people, and maybe where that community even knows, well, they're not Jewish. Why are they doing this? Mm-hmm. So I think that's amazing, and I think that this is one of those things to me that's really special because I don't see any way that we can say to somebody, especially when this encompasses the idea of being a light to the nations, that there's any way that we could say to a woman who's not Jewish, you shouldn't do that.
Oh, God forbid. Yeah. Why would anyone say that?
No. I'm just saying there are so many things out there. There are so many people out there today that I deal with, that are coming in from the nations that are leaving their past lives and are coming in and embracing, wanting to embrace Torah, wanting to attach themselves to Hashem, wanting to attach themselves to the Jewish people. And in some ways they're being turned off by segments of the Jewish community to saying, oh, that's not for you. And what I'm saying is I see this as something that goes over and above, like it breaks the boundaries of where we might say, oh, that's really not for you, or this is not for you, this is for the Jewish people. To me, this is an amazing mitzvah. And that's why I always tell women that you need to see yourselves in a way, the way Hashem sees you and not the way things are in the world. I always think, I'm not envious, but you guys are so elevated as women. There's such a holiness to being a woman that we don't have as men. And I don't think women know that. And I think that you guys are doing an amazing job, maybe not even realizing.
I know, Ira. You got a lot
doing.
Of holiness.
Yeah, but I don't even I don't think you guys realize that it's not just about the tichel. I don't think you realize what the mission that God's given you. And I know you're very humble, but I think your mission goes beyond even what you see or understand right now. In elevating women. So I have a question I started to get to, but we get so excited when we get into these discussions. I love you guys because you're like me. You want to go, forget that. Let's go over here. You said something. Yeah. So I was talking to somebody recently. We talk about the person that's like, we use terms, and sometimes not everybody understands what we're talking about. So, we'll use terms like from birth. We're talking about that person that grew up in an observant home, from birth, as opposed to the Baal Teshuvah like myself and Andrea. But I was talking to somebody recently who grew up in an observant home and covers their hair. But she said to me, you know what? I don't like doing it. So I want you to address that. That's really, for me, I know we spent a lot of time, and we did touch on this and all the things that we talked about, but kind of let's really get to the, to the real point of this. What do you guys say to that woman, whether she's that observant woman, or maybe she's not, whatever level of observance, that somehow thinks that this is a burden? What do you say to her?
Mm-hmm. I mean, so first, we would have to talk to her about why she finds it a burden, because many women, they might feel defined by their hair, and therefore when they cover their hair, they've lost their identity. Or they might feel unloved in their marriage. They might feel self-conscious of being Jewish. There's many, many reasons. So you would have to figure out why that is. And mostly for a woman that's not feeling beautiful and not loving to do the mitzvah, like, I don't love davening every day. There are times, where you have to do something and you're not going to love it. But I think we have to understand that our Creator, the biggest mitzvah is for us to be happy. Our Creator wants us to be happy. He wants to give us everything in the world, and He loves us. He loves us so much. and we all have to understand that. So if something is making us unhappy, we should really, really strive to try to make it a happy experience. God does not want us to be miserable. So that's really what you have to tell a woman. And then she has to, perhaps, there might be a very technical reason why she doesn't enjoy it. And then, that might be easy to fix. But a deep understanding in terms of self-worth and self-esteem is that not only are you loved, you are infinitely loved. And you have this beautiful potential and connection within you. And you can bring that into the world. And we're all so lucky to be alive. That understanding, then covering your hair is just a small detail of that. This will affect how you do dishes and how you talk to your children and everything that you do in life.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I once had a girl tell me, I'm getting married. I don't want to cover my hair. Like, how do you do it? It's so hard. And I said, well, it's my crown.
Wow.
It was not a very long conversation, and she covered her hair.
Wow.
It's a crown. So a lot of life is perspective. Sometimes we have the habit of getting into a negative perspective and missing. We can miss everything. A mother who complains. I'm not going to say this. I'll say something else. But, when a baby wakes up crying at night and a mother complains, if you offer her the perspective, if a little angel, a little friend would come and sit on her shoulder and say, wow, you are so lucky, and remember how much you wanted this, and remember that this was your childhood dream, and this child is going to call you mommy and nobody else, and you have this. Wow. And you'll be tired tomorrow, but that's just tomorrow. But the next day you'll recover, or maybe in 3 months you'll recover. But a child is like wet cement. You are creating something that's going to last forever. And you're so amazing. And you're doing a chesed and you're partnering with Hashem. And all you're going to miss is a couple hours of sleep. And I know it's hard, but oh wow, this woman is on top of the moon. Even the angels can't do what she is doing right at that moment.
Wow. That's all. I'm saying wow a lot today. I'm saying wow more today than with any other guest.
But we don't have that.
Wow.
We have a culture where it's totally okay to say, how you doing? Oh, my baby kept me up at night. We have a culture, and I'm not talking about Jewish culture. I'm talking about whether you want to live happy and inspired or live a life of mediocrity is all going to have to do with your perspective on things. So sometimes you need a little helping hand, a kind, compassionate conversation with Andrea, where someone will give you some more perspective, and then I believe that most things can come alive for you.
So here's a semi-related thing. As Andrew was talking about davening, so I'll give you a perspective that happened to me that changed my perspective on it. Because sometimes you get up in the morning and you say, I got to get up and go shacharis and late tefillin, and it's the same thing every day. And but a friend of this show we've had on many times, Rabbi Eli Cohen, who's in Australia, he said something really interesting. He said this. He said, he talked about it. How sometimes you feel this sense of a burden that you have to get up. He said, but he came to realize one day that Hashem is waiting to hear from him. That Hashem is sitting there waiting to hear from him in the morning. And it changed my life. My life. I never look at davening now as a burden to me. It's that my Abba, my Heavenly Father, is sitting there just waiting for me to come and speak to him. He wants to hear my voice. And when I got that perspective, it totally changed my life as it relates to tefillah and davening.
I would add one thing, though. You can't, not you, I'm saying if I'm inspired in this perspective, I cannot assume that my inspiration will be another woman's inspiration. Something that Andrea touched on is that there are reasons why associations that people make to their beauty, to their look, to their self-esteem, and those issues do need to be worked out. The perspective can help, and that person can only own it if they're a vessel for it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I do, absolutely. I made a comment to somebody yesterday that I was talking to, and sometimes I don't even think we realize, that we're touching on something. And I talked to this person about a relationship with Hashem, and I said, and if you do this, you will have the kind of relationship that you've always wanted with Hashem, as opposed to constantly feeling rejected. And this person just said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that," and that so resonated with me, and again changed their perspective. But it hit a nerve, and I didn't realize that I was going to do that. But that's the word sometimes that Hashem gives us when we're talking to people. So yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we have to come to the root of things and figure out what the root is of the thing that bothers us before our perspective can change.
Yeah.
So, wow, this has been great. But we have about 10 minutes left here.
Serious?
Yeah, it goes fast, right? I was like looking at the 20-minute mark and saying, "Wow, do we have 40 minutes? Do we have enough to speak about in 40 minutes?" And yet here we are. We only have about 10 minutes left. So we've talked about all these things. So you touched on this when you were telling a little bit about your story, Rivka Malka. And you said that you left your position with WOW, really spending a lot more time with your family and spending time with your kids and so forth. But you said there's a new venture that you're involved in. So why don't you tell us about that?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with where Andrea left off, which is when she moved to Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So my husband said to me, "We've got to sit down with Andrea and Yonatan and talk about tichels. We've got to do this." So we sat down, and I'm like, "Honey, I work for WOW. I'm totally busy. Do I even want to be at this meeting? Maybe you'll talk to them. It's business, whatever." I sit at this meeting, and all of a sudden, it's like a mini Beis HaMikdash. All of a sudden, there's just like sparks. We want to do this, but we don't want to sell anything. We want to provide. So what ended up coming out of that conversation was a deep desire to create a place where women can access tichol, have community, where we can give women the looks, the know-how, and the products that they need to enjoy what we ourselves are enjoying and getting commented on all the time. Mm-hmm. And we had a fantastic name. The name is Rapunzel, because when Andrea first, with a W, like you're wrapping your head, mm-hmm. When Andrea first started her personal blog, AndreaGrimberg.com, people enjoyed her videos so much that she ended up making a blog just dedicated to hair wrapping called Rapunzel. So rapunzel.wordpress.com, and that's all tutorials. But people would always ask her, "Andrea, where do I get that? Where do I get that?"
Or I bought a scarf, but it's too slippery, so I can't do that. So I was almost doing people a disservice by showing them how to wrap these scarves, but they didn't have the scarf to wrap it with.
Right. Yeah.
And they were so frustrated. So they kept saying, like, "You have to sell them." And I was like, I'm a musician. Like, what?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of businessmen between the two of us.
Not at all.
No, but we've gotten
a lot of love.
Yeah, and we've gotten some good guidance. And so basically, we opened up a online store called Rapunzel, where we provide tichel and something really special, tichel kits. So you know this from your wife Lori, right? Mm-hmm. She doesn't just wear one tichel. I'm sure she wears one, and then sometimes two, and then sometimes a pin. Does she do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So women, once you get the hang of it, you start putting your thing. You start putting it all together yourself. But especially at the beginning, and even further on, it is so nice when someone says, "Here's a kit. Here's 2 scarves and a beautiful accessory that look great together. And if you want, a pair of earrings." So we do that. We sell tichels, we sell tichel kits, and here is another important part of our mission. And then I'll let Andrea tag in whatever she wants to add. But two things. Most important to us is that we only sell what we ourselves would wear. Right. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of businessmen between the two of us. We go into stores and boutiques and try things on, and mm-hmm. And really make sure that this is something that's going to look great and feel great for a woman. And also, we want to be affordable. Both of us are not fancy shoppers. Where do you?
I shop at Goodwill.
I shop at Goodwill.
Only on a half off day.
If it's like a really special day, we'll go to like Marshall's, Burlington. Special. But I shop at Goodwill, and I love it because it's not about a label. It's colors, it's fun, it's style. You put it all together. So our scarves, you were mentioning a $5 scarf. Yes, we have $5 scarves.
Yeah.
Go ahead and enjoy.
Yeah.
We also have $10 scarves. We have a few specialty items, but
I said, I will only open a store if I myself would shop there. And that's a very high bar to set because I was buying $5, $4 scarves for the rest of my life. So, we had to really, really do a lot of research, but we've done it.
Yeah, not that I don't want to be misleading. Our scarves are not mostly $5.
Okay, right. They are $10, but they're brand new. I was buying $5 scarves from thrift stores.
Right, exactly.
And they're perfect. They're like the perfect Tehol tying scarves.
I know.
Well, not only that, but I mean, certainly if anybody's ever seen pictures of Rivka Malka or Andrea or watched their videos and seen the beautiful creations that they come up with, you can certainly understand that these are high quality, very beautiful scarves. These are not, your you might like to go out and treasure hunt and find that place where you get something really cheap or a Goodwill or whatever. But, this is such an amazing product that you're offering, and it's a spiritual product. It's not I know the two of you are not doing this, to retire in some big house somewhere. I know that there's because you're not going to, by the way, just so you know that. But I know what your heart and your desire is. So why don't you tell a little bit about how people can contact? Let us know. It's Rapunzel. It's WRAPUNZEL, correct?
Yeah. I feel like adding one more sentence. It's not completely relevant.
Okay.
But it might be fun for your listeners to know.
Okay.
As we post pictures of ourselves in our tichel, which, by the way, I hope people visit the site because we also have a place where women from all around the world post pictures of themselves and their tichels, because it's not just about us.
Right.
We get asked a lot about our modest clothing, and that is a dream. It's not in the works. It's not. There's nothing, but just a dream I want to put out there to the great big world that one day we can provide. I'm really scared to commit, but just some type of modest wear for women,
Awesome.
Things that will make it easier for them to get that whole, not just the hair, but really feel great everywhere.
We want to start a revolution. Really.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Where buying clothing is a liberating experience, like instead of going and trying to squeeze yourself into whatever thing is trendy because the media is trying to make you feel bad about yourself, so you'll buy more stuff. We want to do exactly the opposite. We want women to feel great and beautiful and modest and colorful, or whatever they want to feel, whatever they want to bring to the world.
Be fun again.
Yeah.
Right. So how do they start with the tichel? So it's let me try again. It's WRAPUNZEL, right? That's the way it's spelled, Rapunzel.
Yeah.
Is it .com?
Yeah.
Is
.com.
It .com. So that's where the store is. But it's more than just the tichel store. I mean, you have other information. You have the pictures and so forth and so on. That's the store they can go on. What about are the blogs on that site as well, or are you doing separate blogs apart from that?
They're there. You'll see in the About Us page, there's links to both our blogs.
Okay.
And our Facebook page is a huge
community. You gotta go to the Facebook page.
Talk about the Facebook
on there are amazing. They're just, even if we are not at the computer, like someone posts a question within 5 minutes, another lady's answered it for her. Like, these women are incredible.
Tell them what happened. Ira, I'm looking at the clock too. We have 3 minutes, but we need to tell you a story that will take half a minute. Really.
Okay.
Okay. Yesterday we launched our new spring line. Our site's been down for 2 weeks. Women came on the site, and we had this amazing scarf that we only had 5 of. And one woman was having real trouble at the checkout. She couldn't log out because we were having technical difficulties. Totally our fault. But she couldn't get this one scarf that she wanted, and she lost it. Another woman got it. So she posted on this Facebook group that she had lost it, and she was sad. But she's like, "Oh well, I guess another woman will get it and enjoy it, and I'm happy that another woman will get it and enjoy it." So the next morning, I receive an email from a woman, and she says, that woman that wanted that last scarf, she's like, "I'm the woman that got it. Please tell her that, please put that scarf in her order. Don't tell her it's from me. Just write a note on it saying that someone saw your post and wanted to give you this scarf to enjoy."
Wow.
How
amazing is that?
It's not about getting. It's not, these women are not about I want this scarf, and this guy's like, I want to give. And they're giving. They're just
because it's a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual revolution that you're launching, more so than just a business.
Mm-hmm.
So, can people also contact you? Is there a way to contact you by email if women want to talk to you about this, or people have questions, or, there's that woman out there that feels burdened and wants to talk to you about, issues? Is there contact on the website as well?
Yeah, it's rapunzelthestore@gmail.com.
Okay, and the Facebook page?
We have a couple of email addresses, and we're on our Facebook group. We're on the group.
What is the Facebook page called?
It's called Rapunzel the Store.
Rapunzel the Store. So if people go in up in the search box there.
Yeah. The blog page is called just Rapunzel. So people are often part of the blog and also the store page.
Wow. Thank you guys so much for today. This has been great. The time just flew by. So listeners, thank you so much for listening in. I hope that you were able to really gain some new information. Certainly, I hope that the women that were listening were touched, and I certainly hope that the men walk away with a new understanding of this as well, because you might have a man out there that thinks, well, it's why is my wife doing this? Maybe you have a better understanding today. I just want to thank Rivka Malka and Andrea again for being on, and ask that you stay tuned each week as we go beyond the matrix.